Good evening, guys. This is our team interview for Module 2. Our team's called the Boys 2.0. My name is Alberto Abzun.
My name is Matthew.
I'm Thomas Beachy. So Matthew, how does the half-life of ibuprofen compare to the half-life of caffeine?
So the half-life of ibuprofen is 4 times the half-life of caffeine. This means ibuprofen's half-life is larger. Caffeine lasts 3 times longer than ibuprofen, and to caffeine's half-life also has a longer effect. So for caffeine and ibuprofen to last the same amount of time, you would need to take 1/3 the normal amount of half-life of caffeine. All right, Alberto, why is it important to know the half-life of the medication that you're taking?
So, being informed of the half-life of the medication you are taking is very important in many aspects and reasons. It also can be very beneficial for yourself. It's important to calculate the half-life of your medication, comparing it with hours. So, for example, here you can see that I have a chart for ibuprofen and I have a chart for Exerden. And you can see that we start off with the half-life of 800 for ibuprofen, and after 1.9 or after 1 hour, 1.9 hours, it goes down to 400 half-life. So with that, you can calculate the amount that is in your body still, the type of medication that's in your body still, and you can make the decision if you want to dose more of that medication into your body. Thomas, do our bodies ever get rid of the medication we take?
So as we can see in the half-life equations in the graph, we are gradually declining in the amount of medication that is in our bodies, and it's being divided by 2 with each, in this equation, it's with every 1.9 hours that elapse, it's divided by 2. So this could be accurate with our biology because as the half-life proceeds, then we actually never hit 0 in our math and on the graph as well. So then this could be accurate because there could be some sign that we have taken the medication at some point in our life, or the medication could then become so minuscule in our body that it would be as if we had never taken it before. Matthew, how much did corn and soy applied with glyphosate increase every year from 2003 to 2009?
From 2003 to 2009, the amount of glyphosate that was applied to corn and soy increased by about 30,000 every year. So that's about an 11% increase for each year. And out of every year between 2003 to 2009, the years that had the largest increase was 2007 to 2008, which had an increase of 45,000. Alberto, do deaths due to intestinal infection have any pattern or relation to the GE crops grown in the U.S.?
So here on the left side, you can see the graph. It shows the percentage of GE crops grown in the U.S. And we are talking about the GE corn and soy, the GE soy, GE cotton, and GE corn. And you can see that throughout the years, the percentage is growing of crops grown in the U.S. And then on the graph, if we compare the one on the right is deaths due to intestinal infections. You can see that throughout the years, deaths are growing. And if we compare both these graphs, you can see some type of pattern or uniformity. So you can make an assumption that they do have some type of relation. Thomas, should the data in scenario 2 alarm the FDA?
So in the graph on the left, it shows there's a strong correlation between deaths per 1,000 and then acres planted in BT corn. So as we can see that as the acres of BT corn increase, so do the deaths due to intestinal infection. And this, there's no denying that there is a correlation, as we can see. And since we can see that as the BT corn increases to the death, then we can assume that there is some cause and effect between the two. And especially since there are over 3,000 deaths, then this should be something that is worth investigating by the FDA. Matthew, so how many males will be involved in accident, and the current trend continues for 3 years?
So, if the current rate of accidents stays the same, that would mean that there would be a 30%, 38% more accidents each year. So after the third year, the amount of accidents would be over double the original amount, and there would be 426 males involved in accidents if the current rate of accidents continued for 3 years. Alberto, if we look at the fatalities for 2017 and 2018, can we say that we are implementing safety policies or regulations that are helping society?
So here on the graph for fatalities, you can see that from 2017, there was 198 fatalities. Then we move forward to 2018 and we have 166 fatalities. So we see a lower number here, and we can assume that we have implemented some type of safety regulations maybe that have helped our society. But this is a 5-year graph. So if we look to our left in 2014, we had 198 fatalities, and we move up to 2015 and the number actually goes up to 205. So what's more important here is to keep statistics of these graphs and calculate how many fatalities happened in 2019 and 2020, and that will give us a better answer on whether we are using good safety regulations or safety policies. How does age seem to affect the death rate, Thomas?
So in the data, we can see that as the age of the driver increases, the death rate seems to increase as well. And another deciding factor is that the 5-year average for all of these seem to increase as well with the age. So it's not just a 1-year trend, it's also a 5-year trend, which makes it more of a correlation between age and then the death rate. So as we can discern from the graph and then our data as well, we can assume that as the age of the driver would increase, then their reaction rate would also, or the reaction time would decrease, being able to cause more accidents. Then they would be more liable to cause more accidents. Matthew, how does the standard deviation affect the scores?
So to find a z-score, you must subtract the mean from the x value and divide that number by the standard deviation. And in this case, the standard deviation is 6.15 and the mean is 27.7. So this means that the larger the standard deviation is, the smaller the z-score will be. So the larger the standard deviation is, the more you must divide by, which would mean that the number would be smaller. Alberto, can you utilize your BMI score to guide your body goals and to improve your health?
So BMI stands for body mass index, And what that is that it helps you calculate whether your body weight is good or bad. So here, you can see that I made a graph of my BMI score, my mom's BMI score, which is equal to 27. And how I got that was using a BMI calculate to calculate my height, and then I calculated my weight, and I came up with the BMI of 27.4. And then on the right, you can see if I'm underweight, normal weight, or overweight. Also, you can see that if I have obesity. So you can definitely use your BMI score to see where you're at, and then from there you can make a plan to maybe have better eating habits or going to the gym to help you get where you want to be, which is at normal weight. So BMI does help you with your body goals. How does knowing your C score for average BMI help you, Thomas?
So calculating your BMI can be a useful tool, but it is not very useful unless we can compare it to other people within our society and also just throughout the world. So calculating your Z-score comparing your Z-score to this data can can help you compare yourself to other people, not just by putting yourself in like a number with just the BMI scores, but also as a percentage of the data. And you can see kind of where you stack up, not just with the numbers and being like a mean or an average, but also percentage wise if you're in a good range of health. Matthew, at what point on the graph is the U.S. owned wealth and number of U.S. households most similar?
So these two graphs show the number of households in the U.S. on wealth, and it compares the two. And so the fourth group on the graph, the bar graph on the right, is when the number of U.S. households and U.S. owned wealth is the most similar. In the fourth group, the number of households is 10%, while the U.S. owned wealth is at 12%. At every other point on the graph, either the U.S. owned wealth is a lot more than the percent of U.S. households, or it's the opposite, where the percent of U.S. households is a lot more than the U.S. owned wealth. Alberto, what are some similarities and differences between federal taxes and state taxes?
All right, when we were talking about federal taxes and state taxes, it's good to create some pie charts and compare both of these pie charts so you have a better viewing of it. So here on the left, we got our federal tax dollars, and then on the right, we have our state taxes for California, just an example. So you can see some similarities are that both of these taxes implement a lot on Medicare insurance, and that takes a big chunk of their percentage. There's a big difference though for the federal tax dollars. They take a big implement of on Social Security percentage, which is 24%, while taxes for California take more importance on education. So that goes from kinder to 12th grade and higher education. And then some similarities as well go for transportation. They both have transportation. You can see that California has a little bit more, 6%, and federal has about 2%. And then for California, you have all other for 31%, and for federal, 16%, which is going to be the biggest percentage, is going to go to defense and international security assistance. So you can see some similarities and you can see some differences as well. Why is the smallest amount of wealth held by most of the households, Thomas?
So in our data, we can see that almost half of the wealth in America is held by the top households. So the less households you have in this graph, the more likely, the less households that there are, the more wealth is held by them. So we know more about the middle and lower classes, which do not hold much wealth, but hold most of the households. And so, but a lot of the wealth seems to be overlooked, and that's probably just because we don't have as much knowledge about it. And as a country, we could probably benefit from a more concentrated effort to investigate where our money goes and to educate our people on basic money skills. Matthew, how much money could you save by moving from Texas to Colorado?
So the two cities I picked for this question are Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Austin, Texas. It is cheaper to live in Colorado Springs than Austin by about 4%. So say you were making about $50,000 a year. So if you're making that in Austin and then you move to Colorado and continue to make $50,000, you would be saving $2,000 more because it is cheaper to live there compared to Austin. Alberto, if you are looking to live in a city that will help you save money and you will be financially stable, what would be good categories to research before moving in?
Okay, so there are many categories to do research on before moving into a typical city that you are looking to move into. First of all, you want to look up the most important expenses you will have living in the city. So, for example, I use California since it's a very expensive city. What we're looking at is our monthly expenses. So you have to implement on your expenses state income taxes because California has state taxes. Then you have to put your federal taxes. How much estimate money or how much can you estimate paying for a mortgage or renting in this case? So you got to look up what type of transportation are you taking? Are you going to take public transportation or are you going to be paying for a car? And then something that you can look at too is the cost of living. So if you compare Texas to California at the cost of living for housing, you can see that San Diego is $29,465 compared to Texas, which is $20,322. So before I move to California, that's a category that I have to look at. Also, I'm comparing the food, and you can see that for Texas it's about $9,000, and for California it's about 10,900. So before I move to California, these are some categories that I'm going to be doing some research on and making sure that I can afford living in this city. What is a good strategy to move to an area that costs more money to live, Thomas?
So some good strategies to move to an area that is more expensive are little things like saving or evaluating taxes and things like that. And you can also look at the difference in taxes and also income tax on the state, because in Texas we don't have income tax, and in most other states they do have income tax. So you can also look at inflation, because in larger cities, if you're moving to a larger city, then that is a big factor, because most jobs pay more, but then the cost of living is more expensive, but it's offset by the job. And so just all things to take into account in moving to any area, especially a big city. So that's our Module 2 team video. Thank you guys very much for watching.